Mhm. Well, welcome everyone to the discussion on the community advisors and veteran community advisors process for the Cardano Catalyst program. And thank you all for those who are participants in the process. It's been a busy 3 weeks, is it now, of everyone working together to review the proposals and then to do the reviews of the reviews. And obviously there's a lot to discuss, and as we grow, there's new challenges to take on, and we've certainly observed that, and we'll dive into discussing those things. I thought I'd start by sharing a screen of some of the statistics that Victor has been gathering, and he sends his regrets. He actually got COVID this week, so I hope he'll be recovering quickly, but he was not feeling well today. And let me share my screen here and pop that open. And then also put it in present mode. Does that come up? Are you able to see it? It should be, it's low. You should be able to see it now. Is good? Okay, thanks, JP. So the first chart is showing the assessments grouped by the number of reviews and through the VA tool per challenge. So it does look like we got between over 100 and up to 700 reviews of the assessment. So that's really terrific. It's a big effort to go through all of these. And then I think, let's see, the second chart here is the assessments grouped by the number of reviews through the vCA tool overall. So it says that it looks like 98% of them got 7 or more reviews. So that's quite a bit. So that's really good. And then we have another chart here that shows the assessments grouped by number of reviews received so far. So you can see how the distribution goes. So the highest one is that the proposals are getting 10 reviews, and it goes all the way out to 31. So thank you all for that tremendous effort. Now, let me stop sharing for a moment. And the primary thing I wanted to do is to start by having kind of, maybe I'll even follow the order of some of the way some of you may know, we kind of put together sort of draft notes. And before we go into talking about potential improvements, maybe we can talk about things that were observed in this round, both in terms of strengths and weaknesses. And let me ask you this: is there a preference to do this as kind of just a dialogue, or does at some point I'll probably bring up some of the documents that have been used. Those are helpful. But maybe before I dig into that, if someone wants to raise their hand and offer, suggest, comments on things that were observed, and both on the positive and negative side with this Fund 7. And I should also ask, given the importance of this discussion, I meant to ask right at the beginning if someone would volunteer to take notes. Is there anyone in the group that kind of is naturally a good note taker? And would you like to volunteer to take notes for the discussion? Do you have any volunteers? I think it's important, so I am going to wait till someone volunteers.
I'll do that.
Who said? Okay, Nadia, thank you very much. That's
Oh,
great.
Nadia's gonna do it?
Oh, I'm
Nadia,
sorry.
that's you? Okay,
So in
you
chat,
go.
Nadia said yes. More than one, and JP said yes verbally, and more than some. If both of you can do it, that's great. That I think that would really help, and then
I'll
we
take
can
some
kind of
photos.
combine them. That's super. I really appreciate that. So if you can use the React with the hands up, that is really helpful because it also visually puts people kind of in a row. So does anyone want to start with their own observations of the process for Fund 7? Philippe, go ahead.
I think Peter was before me.
I think you're right and I missed it. So if he wants to go first, that would be great.
Actually, I'm going to defer.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. No, I see the numbers are looking very good. We finally have, I think, significant numbers of CAs, significant, well, we'll see about vCAs, but now I think the quantity is there compared to the previous funds. And now I think we have to start working on quality. But quantity is definitely there, and it's great to see, and it's, very, very good. I mean, having more than 100,000 reviews of assessments, having 8,800 assessments by CAs. Okay, Matthias saying 21% of assessment amount has signs of bot activity. That's something that we need to take care of.
Right.
That's the quality part, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a nice way to frame it, actually, is that, this is all brand new. We're 1 year into this experiment, and it's been growing rapidly. And so keeping up with that growth in terms of the processes that have to be carried out is a big challenge. But on keeping up with the growth, we've definitely succeeded. And I think all of us who participated in the process this round know that we have to find ways to improve the quality now. So that's great. That's a great way to start off, Philip. Others? Peter, do you want to go ahead?
Well, yeah. So I've participated in Fund 7 here as a proposer. I'm not a CA or a vCA. And just kind of diving back into the community forum and Telegram took me about half an hour to catch up on what seems to be quite a controversial discussion. And I think that's kind of what you're hinting at by framing this meeting and saying it's important to take minutes. But frankly, I'm a little bit confused about what the issue actually is and why certain people are raising certain things. And it seems to be a lot of there's a lot of noise as well and a lot of name calling. And so I'm a little disappointed in the tone of the discussion, but of course, not everybody can control that. And so I see Matthias raised the issue about bots. I think, and so so I guess I'm hoping just from you as the lead is to have a summary from you, Kenric, on what's been going on and why you think this is a sensitive meeting.
Yeah, I can give, I'll go ahead and do that. Although I want to be clear too, that I'm a facilitator for the community and there may very well be other people in the community that have a more in-depth insight than myself. But one of the core issues that arose during this round of the assessments is that there were assessments that were clearly done from templates and not simply, and I want to contrast, like if someone is using a template to sort of facilitate doing high quality assessments, then that would be appropriate. But in this case, they were clearly kind of cut and paste exercises to produce hundreds of assessments that were of very low quality such that they all had to be filtered out. And so that then became a very challenging process for the vCAs to handle in terms of both making sure that these low quality assessments that didn't contribute value were filtered out and then to also make sure that time and effort was focused on the higher quality assessments and giving fair rankings as to whether they were good or excellent. So that was sort of the big new challenge in this round. And others that want to comment on that further, can raise their hand, particularly if there's anyone in the group that was, part of the team that was helping compile that and do analysis on it. Oscar, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. I'm not part of the team. I actually tried to be a vCA, but as you mentioned, I noticed there was too much bot well, I wouldn't even say bot activity, but there were a lot of repeated things. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, why are we using the tools we have? I mean, why are we on this still Google form? Or I found the alternative tool that we have, this vCA tool, quite nice. But why does it remain so distant from the main Catalyst program? Or why aren't they getting?
That's a great question. And does someone want to volunteer to answer it? I don't have to answer all of the questions that come up. So Tivo, go ahead. You're our tool maker. Go ahead, Tivo.
So right now, I think, yes, we all have handed the data, and I think what we are supposed to do is we use our own tools. How do we create these kinds of assessment? How do we validate what we see? Yes, one of them is a community tool. I myself have created a tool which unfortunately only Excel users who have a license can use it. But whoever has like language skills, Python or anything, can wrangle the data. I also started using a website which is called TIFF.com, and which creates a difference between, like, when people say, hey, there is a copy-pasted text. I started looking more deeply into the the assessment differentials, and it shows me what exact words are replaced in different assessments, and it does actually show that some assessments, even though they are used as templates, they're copy-pasted, but these few changes what are made actually align with the proposal and give feedback or improvements to the idea itself. So I wouldn't say that all the pointed out assessments should be filtered out. But yeah, basically what I wanted to do is say is, for now, we have to create the tools and create proposals about creating tools. We are at that stage at the moment.
I can add to that a little bit too, Oscar, in that, we use IdeaScale, which is a third-party partner for the proposal process, and that includes entering in the assessment tools. There's a lot of things that are really great about the tool, and it's been a terrific way to get us underway, but it's actively being developed too to facilitate our needs. And then outside of the tool, the community has built its own tools to, but integrating those two things is challenging and not complete. So for instance, we have the CA tool and we have the vCA tool, and those right now are just facilitators, and you still have to kind of cut and paste your work into IdeaScale. So that's part, or in the vCA process into the Google Sheet. So ongoing efforts to improve the tools is part of the community's work. Do you have a follow-up on that, Oscar?
Yeah, I had the follow-up because I found a tool, and I did notice they did get funding, so around Fund 6. But as Steve just said, it's like a way to have this more actively pursued. I mean, they don't have, or Catalyst should have a full challenge dedicated to helping this tool. I'm not sure, because I was absolutely blocked. There was this Excel sheet, there was this similarity Excel sheet where I could see, I mean, this was this assessor 331. I still have in my mind this number is, all of the templates were the same. I mean, there is no cost on doing this review or voting. I mean, if we don't have something more advanced to filter them, it's impossible to then make statistics. Yeah, we had 200,000 reviews. No one can go over them, and barely any of them are helpful.
You're right. And so I'm going to shift in a little bit to specific suggestions for improvements. And so, but you're absolutely right, Oscar. So I appreciate hearing that clearly. And I'll take a few more in this sort of part of the meeting with regards to, experiences in this round. And then we'll shift towards, and I'll bring up another spreadsheet to go over specific improvements that have been proposed and how we might start the process of working on it. So go ahead, Mark. What is your observation of the round?
Yeah, hi. I'm actually one way are appointed, because basically there's plenty of people. Like I sometimes saw people that posted like 340 assessments, and some of them were made really badly, but some of them were made better and wouldn't be recognized firsthand. And like I was wondering, like if one of those like 340 assessments gets voted acceptable by the vCAs, then this person would be a vCA in the next round and would be able to hurt the whole process by just like doing random vCA assessments. And maybe we should have some kind of thresholds about how much % of your assessments need to be valid in order to make any sense of it, and not just anyone that's managed to pass like one assessment gets to become a vCA. Otherwise it will be dangerous to the whole process, I believe.
Yes, that's a great observation. And actually that was one that was commented on just this morning as I was kind of putting the notes together. And so that is in fact one of the suggestions for improving the process, where we would have some kind of threshold on either good or excellent reviews in order to be qualified to be a vCA. Thank you, Mark. Navad, please go ahead.
Naveed, but close enough. And I think Matthias has got his hand up as well, so Matthias, feel free to come off mute and just interrupt me if you need. So just wanted to clarify some of the observations around some of the language we're using around bots and templates. So I think just breaking it down to make it practical for people, and we're still in the VCA process, so can't really share examples, otherwise it influences others who are still working. But if you imagine there's a central database of 1,000, maybe 1,500 sentences. So for example, in the chat, one of the problems with the template, blah, blah, a 40 or 50 character, or even 100 character sentence, 10 or 15 words with specific punctuation, specific grammatical errors, that type of stuff. A number of CAs have simply taken that database, copied and pasted into their assessments to make the assessments look sensible in most cases. They don't add any value. But when you start to see the same sentence with the same mistakes, the same punctuation, same grammatical errors appear 30, 40, 50 times, it starts to raise some questions in your head. And I think that's where I did some analysis, probably not as great as Matthias's analysis, but it was fairly basic. Shared it with Marek, but that's kind of where it can be confused. I don't necessarily think it's bots. There's no machine out there doing this magically for anybody. There's people sat there potentially copying and pasting and displaying bot-like behavior.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's a collaboration. I think I got it down to, I think 20-25 people that I saw. So a lot of filtering has gone on.
Right, I think you've captured it nice what the difficulty is too, because on the one hand, we clearly need to filter things that aren't actually relevant to the proposals and aren't actually providing assessments. But it's time consuming to do that. And so there probably is, at this point, in order to improve the quality, some kind of pre-filters are going to be needed to be qualified as a CA or a vCA.
Yeah, probably some pre-filters on some of the assessments, maybe in parallel with the proposer flagging stage. So I think one of the roles of the vCA is not just to check the assessment against a proposal, does it make sense, but also to look for gaming and this bot type behavior, which is quite clearly on the email we got. So
yeah.
part of our role as vCAs is to try and identify this stuff. So for me, if I identified 331 or I got a whole list of numbers, but
yeah.
who 331 has been mentioned, so we'll stick with that. But a whole bunch of people who look like they've been cheating the system, let's say.
Thank you, Naveed.
My justification is simply to filter everything out, even if they've got one or two good assessments in there. I have read I've read through every, well, I will have by tonight, every single assessment, every single proposal. But doing a rework again on all the people I think who are in that gaming frame of mind. I don't know, Matthias, you wanted to add anything?
Yeah, go ahead, Matthias.
Yes, hi everybody. So all I can do is actually report of what I have seen. So I will not point out distinct CA IDs or anything, because we are still in the process of our review Q&A. So I have found like a structure of about 20 IDs who clearly showed signs that they were all related. So there were strings of text that's intertwined with the other over these several IDs and over different assessment as well. Also, what's really stuck out were the proposals on which it was done. So the proposals, they kept on returning the same proposals, and so it flagged in my mind. So then I went on and to check the specific strings, and as Naveed said, you get 40-50 hits in the spreadsheet. So that is not normal, because there were very distinct strings that you do not hear every day in an assessment. Also spelling errors, grammatical errors, punctuation errors, things like that. So in
you're
total,
saying that these spelling and punctuation errors are repeated across many assessments, right?
Yes. The grammatical errors, I was a bit more lenient in, because I know if you translate from certain languages, you can make the same grammatical errors. So it's not the same as downright a spelling error or punctuation error. So those 20 CA IDs, if you add them up, that accounts for 1,871 assessments, which translates to 21.14% of the total assessments. Now, suppose they all get filtered out. So what happens then is you will have proposals without adequate assessments to go to a voting stage. So that is something we need to realize. It's a real threat at this moment. Then further on, there were also a lot of sentence incoherencies, which were pointed out. Could be copy pasting, and it could be actual bots. Now, I have found proof that it's actual bots, because if you copy paste strings of text, you don't get each word starting with a capital letter. And this occurred in all the IDs in that list of 20.
Okay.
With the same strings of texts, sometimes intertwined, sometimes not, but the same words kept on returning.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, those are great observations to capture. Thank you, Matthias. And
if anyone has any questions about this, feel free.
yeah, I do want to get to Oscar and Philip, but since you've both already provided some input, what I'd like to do at the moment is just kind of open it up to the floor. You don't have to raise your hand. If you have any feedback from what the observations were, if you want to just keep it short, but if you want to add some something to what's been said, I'll just keep it as an open forum for a moment. Does anyone want to jump in and respond to some of these observations? You don't have to raise your hand, just go ahead.
So I raised my hand already. I just want to say one thing that I noticed that I find very challenging is some people are too accurate, too literal to what they're saying. Is they'll take the criteria of the scoring guide and just copy and paste that in and then do a yes or no. And I found this across many different proposals, and automatically I filtered those out. And so it becomes this, like, even if, you know, you were saying they change a few words, and even though the TiVo was saying the majority is cut and paste, but there is a little bit of a nuance, to me, that's still filtered out. And I think in the vCA process, that comes down to a personal judgment call, but it'd be great if we could kind of put some more parameters around when cutting and pasting is okay and when it isn't. Because I think if you are going to do many, there are some sentences that are the same, but it's when it becomes the, you know, almost impossible to tell that there is differences.
Yeah, that's another nice observation, and it gets to kind of what our criteria for quality is. I noticed, for instance, in the chat about, I guess it was 2 weeks ago when I held a meeting about, or maybe it even goes back 4 weeks ago when I was talking about doing the assessments, that I myself made sort of a reference to the idea that, you know, one paragraph that kind of reviews the quality of the, you know, for each of the three categories, but you'd essentially have one paragraph that reviews reviews the proposal, and then a second paragraph maybe that provides feedback to the proposers of what they could improve. Now, I saw in the chat, and this is a valid thing for the community to discuss, that really isn't adequate guidance, and maybe the quality needed to be an excellent really needs to be higher. And that, you know, and maybe it's cutting off people who are putting more time into, you know, longer length reviews that add much more depth and insight. If anyone wants to comment, again, either on JP or my point or someone else's, and maybe I'll let, since Oscar's been waiting, I'll let Oscar go first, but we'll keep this fairly open for a few minutes.
All right. So it's more on a recap. Matthias, are you sharing your analysis or your software for analysis at some point?
You're on mute right now, Matt.
Yes. My analysis, I only have the CSV file of my vCA reviews, really. So what I did was I took the strings of text each time from the spreadsheet. The software being used is the similarity analysis, which is provided by IOG.
That was really good. Okay, because to me it would be interesting to share this in part of community to build the tool. A second question is, there is, so we are all fighting a lot of reviews which are spam. Is that against, but there's also this rule that vCA should not be aware of the rest, but can we have at least shared flagging where say, okay, I do think this is all spam, and save the other vCAs of hitting the same bot? Because we are all trying to find a good review in a haystack of, I mean,
yeah, it's a good
if
question.
Already 21% is really obviously a bot, that should be out of the review process, or like kind of a spam. It's like you can say this was good, this was bad, this was non-pertinent. but the spam is shared. It's like if you get flagged in spam, all VCAs get filtered out, these comments. So
Yeah.
so we have more bandwidth to work on the serious things.
So let me respond to that, because I was concerned enough about what was happening that Tavo and a few of others, Philippe, I think, well, excuse me, I think I said that wrong, but Victor, Tavo, and a few others and I met last week because this had kind of flared up. And there's, with any process we develop, there's also ways to gain the process. And so apparently we considered putting out kind of a spreadsheet last week that would help people identify which things have been flagged as out and not really concentrate on that. But then what was pointed out is that can be gamed too, because a vCA who wants to game the system rather than contribute to the system could then just easily go through these ones that have been flagged, add a 0, and then get rewarded for not providing new information. So we kind of concluded last week that although we knew there was a challenge in this round, that trying to sort of provide a suggestion about what to filter out to the community early in the in the middle of the round wasn't going to solve the problem. And that was part of why we kind of decided that it was okay on the chat. If you were participating in Discord or Telegram, there was guidance there on sort of which IDs seemed to be problematic. But we decided in the middle of the round, we didn't want to change the process or to go further than that. I do want to shift the discussion. I think Philippe was waiting for a while, so I'm going to let him go, and then I'm going to shift the discussion to improvements, and I will let Tijan and D. Collard be the first to go in that new round. Philippe, go ahead.
Thank you, Kenric. I wanted to respond to what JP said. When people just take from the guide, copy from the guide, and then say yes or no, right? I believe that those are, people who are maybe CAs for the first time. Maybe they are scared that they are not doing something right. They want to make sure that their assessment is at least good. So also this is something that, working with people in new CAs, like if we put too much rules for CAs, even good intentioned CAs will have very similar assessments if they follow a guideline that's too precise.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, this will, and then even it may lead to phrases like, this assessment contains X, Y, and Z. It contains the milestones, KPIs, metrics. There are, even as a CA, when you do these things, I see myself writing the same sentences or similar sentences, not by intention. So then if we have a filter for that, then every CA will have to think, okay, I have to write, if I want to do 20 reviews, I have to make 20 different sentences. I will have to lose time on that instead of maybe giving constructive advice. So maybe something to think about is even to keep the guidelines as they are, or even reduce them a little bit, give people a little freedom, and then implement what Matthias said, comparative algorithms about sentences, words, phrases, things like that.
Very good.
I would like to just jump in and comment on this for 1 second.
Yeah.
So I've seen lots of people say that the guidelines, I don't know, sound too strict or something like that. But in my opinion, they're just questions, and questions which are meant to be answered in a free form way. So basically, when it asks you if the proposer outlined how this proposal will impact the ecosystem, you're supposed to come up with arguments and discuss what they said in the proposal, not say yes, no. So you're really not supposed to come at identical sentences anywhere, in my opinion. It's
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
strange that
Al.
we have this problem. Yeah.
I would also say is the incentive we have of writing more reviews. The idea would be actually to weight your reviews. And first, there was a standard, the grade filter. I mean, you shouldn't say the proposer put the KPI. You should actually say, this doesn't even cover the grade filters, no KPIs, no schedule, no like, and have the easy ones out. The other thing is right now we are really, a review is a review. It's like there's no quality on length, or there is no vesting, which I would think would become really important even to fight bots and whatever. It's like you say, I'm reviewing this with 100 ADA, and at some point you run out of ADA to make more reviews, but you give a weight to your work.
Yeah.
And this is something you can actually make focus people.
Yeah, let me pause you there, Oscar, because I want to go now to the improvements. And I have one of two ways that I can do this. There were two different documents that have been used in the community. Dan has put together a kind of more systematic spreadsheet that has the titles and then also documents that link to that. And that one's more organized, but it may, but for today, I'm a little concerned that maybe it doesn't cover everything that's been discussed. And then there was another sort of more open-ended document that was passed around the last couple of weeks that people have been adding to. For those that have contributed to one or the other, do you have a preference which document we bring up now and talk through? Is there a preference of which one?
It's probably worth starting with that spreadsheet. That seems to be where Daniel was trying to consolidate everything. But as long as it's, I don't know whether it's captured everything. So there was that other rewards document. There was an original Word document.
We might have time to go.
There's also the problem sensing area in idea scale that's got stuff in. So all those things need to come together.
That's a good point too. I didn't capture that one, but we may have time to go through both. Unless someone feels strongly otherwise. I was leaning towards using Dan's spreadsheet also, so I'll go ahead with that. Any differing opinions before I get started here? All right, so let me get that spreadsheet open. I have to find it again. Okay, here it is. And let's see, let me just share my screen. Okay. All right, and press OK there. All right. Can you see the spreadsheet well now? And let me go back up to the top. These have not been ranked in any ways, and those of you who know my work, I've become a big fan of quadratic voting. I was really tempted to try to put a quadratic voting poll on these, and we may do that in the future at some point. So we have a long list even on this sheet, and I don't have a way to prioritize them. So yeah, I think we'll work on that. So I think what I'll do first is I'm just going to leave this open. You can start to kind of, and actually let me put the link to both of these documents in the chat. So those of you who haven't seen it yet can open it up yourselves. So there's this spreadsheet, and then there's also this community document that was put together that has even more ideas in it. Okay, let me go back. So you can begin to browse this list, and if you have a particular one that you would like to address, maybe it was even your idea, why don't you raise your hand, and then I'll use that as the process for prioritizing it, which ones we talk about. And in the meantime, I'll let Tegani, could you pronounce your name for us?
Tagin.
Tagin.
Yes.
Great. And where are you calling in from?
I am calling from Sweden.
Excellent.
But
Okay.
I'm from Ethiopia.
Yeah, super.
I just have a question and a comment. I was wondering which challenges have this kind of bot activity most. Probably that would give us a kind of direction where to focus, for example.
That's an interesting question. Does anyone know whether the bots were targeted towards a particular challenge, or was it spread across all of the assessments?
To me, the one I noticed was just to get as much quantity in as possible. So spread across every proposal that could get a comment.
Yeah, I don't remember them being specified in any particular challenge setting.
Okay.
My experience as a proposer was that I did actually have one proposal in one category, like and the other proposals did not experience it, but it seemed to be targeted specifically to proposals that were essentially in competition with another assessment, and then they all got scored ones across the board, and then then there was that same assessor reviewed another one that got all fives. So,
okay.
and that seems like more manual manipulation, not necessarily like automated bots, but that's my anecdotal experience.
Yeah, and that's exactly that really was one of the key purposes of the vCA process was, so indeed, if you're putting all fives on one proposal and all ones on others in a particular category, that has to be filtered out. That's not appropriate. That's not what the process is designed for, right? So that's good to know.
Second point that I just want to say that the CA and the vCA arrangement, I don't feel that it is really following the Catalyst arrangement. There is a community for the circles that are forming in Catalyst to promote or to certain ideas or certain proposals. The VC and CA work, sometimes it can be also influence, like cultural influence can be there, and professional influence. For example, there are computer programmers and others, lawyers and others. So is there an idea to form a kind of circles, CA circles and VCA circles, who specialize in certain kind of proposals, so that
there have been ideas proposed along that lines, and I'm going to get to decolored next, but I'll take a minute also to talk a little bit about something related to that. So as I scan down the list here, number 15 is introduction of challenge teams, which was adopted and was active in this round. And I got some messages as to, I'm not sure everyone even understands what challenge teams are, because it's new to the process. And so the challenge teams are a group of people that are going to oversee essentially a kind of auditing process of the execution of the projects within that challenge. And so the intent anyways would be that that's a team that has some expertise about that particular challenge topic. And you could envision something similar evolving as the program grows in size, where the community advisors also have to kind of register what their expertise is and which of the challenges they feel that they are qualified to do reviews for, and then also are not in conflict. In other words, they haven't either done a proposal or not advocating for a particular proposal. So there is we may get to it, but yeah, there have been some specific suggestions along the lines of what you're describing to Johnny. So thank you for your input. Colorad, could you go next and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, it's Dwayne. Kenric, we've talked many times.
Oh, great. Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, so I just want to go do a little bit of a rebuttal here.
Yeah.
I am very concerned about the process several VCAs are using, right? So I come from a background where doing proposal assessments was my job for 20 years. Repeating the same phrasing over and over again, a template, right? That's industry standard practice. That's best practices. You don't want to be saying things in different ways. You want to be consistent in the way you respond to proposals when you're assessing them. So from my perspective, I understand there are bots out there that are making nonsense stuff. Yes, those are totally, get rid of them. It makes no sense. But if somebody's using the same phrase over and over again to be consistent in how they, like many proposals have the same thing. Do they have a roadmap, right? Is the roadmap good, whatever? You could say that in the same way every single time. There's no value add to rephrase that into a different thing. The other thing I'd like to point out is that if you do not use all the criteria in the CA guidelines and you're doing a subjective pick and choose whichever ones you want, you can slant your score to anything you want, right? So if something doesn't have a budget, I just admit it. I don't choose to evaluate the budget, but I say it's got a good, strong roadmap. Therefore, I gave it 5 stars. If you're not using a template and going through all the criteria in the guidelines, you are just gaming the system. I feel very strongly about this from my experience. It's just, we're going about this the wrong way, right? Like I really have some serious concerns about the strategies that some people are saying here, right? Like the VCAs in particular.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
go ahead.
In a moment, Tony, let me just, so I really wanted to say I appreciate that, because this kind of counter argument is very important for us to kind of converge on a better process. I think we've sort of identified that better processes are needed, but I share some of the concerns you've expressed, Dwayne, that, and if I just recap it, what you're saying is that a template or a framework helps you stay objective, rather than, and helps you make sure that you're reviewing each proposal in the same way. So that's a good suggestion, and I'll let Tommy respond also.
Yeah, so just to bring some clarity into this, there was copy pasting happening on 3 different levels. The first level is that you're copying from yourself. So there were many CAs who use that template and whatnot, whatever you want to call it. So I don't have any opinions about that. But then worse than that, there were CAs that were copying from each other. So either they were working together, or it was the same person with multiple accounts, or something else. So same stuff, word by word, coming from different CAs. And then the third level is the copying across funds. So even like when I started seeing like very familiar sounding things like that could be written by me, then I realized that shit, it was actually written by me in a previous fund. So then I started using this aggregated file from Fund 6 to check every single assessment, whether it appears in this fund and whether it appears in the previous fund. And there was shitloads of those.
Okay, so I'd just like to comment on that.
Yeah,
so
ahead,
number 2 there, where you've mentioned, multiple CAs in the same fund using the same phrasing, totally, that's some sort of conspiracy or whatever. Those people are working together. That's wrong, right? I will say that people that are using, so we told people, new CAs in particular, to look at previous exceptional assessments, and for a CA to go back and use that same phrasing to say, okay, if I want to say that something has a good budget structure and here's a good phrasing of it that got an excellent review before, right? And somebody use that as a template, that should be fine.
Dwayne, these were constructed assessments where you take one sentence from somewhere, another sentence from somewhere, and you put them together.
Okay,
It was systematic.
Yeah. Okay, so that in that case so this is where I go back to, you have to look at them individually and say, does it actually make sense? So if what comes out of it is just a, bunch of random sentences that don't apply to the proposal, then I totally agree, it should be
The
wiped.
problem is that in many occasions, it kind of makes sense. If you are not aware of this issue, and if you just read it as an individual assessment, you might mark it excellent. But if you know that it's copied from several other CAs from previous funds even, then you know that that's not just right, it's just dishonest.
And I think the similarity tool, and I want to take a closer look at that, was maybe trying to get at, is that when information is correlated, that information is of less value. Now, I hear what Dwayne's saying, though, because Dwayne is making an interesting point that if a template is being used to make sure that you stay objective and that your evaluation is consistent across all the reviews, that could actually add value. But it has to be careful. I think it has to be carefully done, because, in most of these cases, what we're identifying is that there's such high correlation that it's not actually adding new information. And what we want in these assessments, ideally, is an independent observation as to the quality of the review. And there should be some nuances to it because every proposal is different. So the assessment should have some summary of what's in this proposal, and it should have some thoughtful remarks about what the quality of the proposal is with regard to the three categories that we use to provide those assessments. So, but nevertheless, I like Dwayne's input. I think that's an important consideration as we try to refine the process. And I'll let Alexandru go next.
Yeah, so I hope I can address your concern, Dwayne. I just want to say that the discussions on the vCA channel outlined, at least to me, that all of us were concerned with how do we read every proposal and review them fairly. We didn't want to blanket filter out anything. And there was no case of, oh, I saw two similar sentences or two identical sentences for one CA, and we decided to blanket filter everything out. It didn't work like that. These were literal sentences that they were literal identical sentences. So not similar phrasing, not anything like that.
Thank you, Alexander.
That's what I want to add. Yeah.
And I'll go to JP next. I'm going to try to keep it moving along, and then I'm going to dive into a few of these in more detail. Go ahead, JP.
Thanks. I also, so I definitely respect what you said, Dwayne, and I think that there is a value to having a rubric for how you're approaching every assessment to make sure that you're using the same criteria. However, what I've discussed and been, for the last 4 times I've been a CA is that we're not just looking for, does it have this, does it have this? We're not looking for a check mark assessment across all of them. And by omitting, okay, well, I'm only focusing on the budget. Well, that's your prerogative for sure. But at the same time, when we approach these, my view as a CA is we are giving information to voters. The voters isn't, does it have this, does it have that? It's, what do they say? What are they proposing? How have they told you they're going to do it? Not whether they just have it, but it's our duty to engage with the proposal, to engage with the material, to engage with the ideas, not just go on the score, on the checklist. And what I was saying before is people are cutting and pasting that list, putting it in and saying, yes, it has this, no, it has that. And to me, that not only is inappropriate, it skews the vote, it doesn't add any new value, and it is distracting. And so for me, those are an instant filter out. I appreciate that you can have a rubric, but it's engagement with the proposal that is necessary for a CA to assess. And as a vCA, that is what I look for, is your ability to engage, not just checklist.
Thank you, JP. That's a
So
great.
I'd like to just jump in there. So what you've just described is that you want to assess the idea instead of the proposal, which is exactly opposite of what the instructions are in the CA guidebook that we give to new CAs. We tell
That's not
them
what
to
I'm saying.
assess the proposal, not the idea.
Yep, but the proposal is written in such a way that the idea is flushed out.
Mhm.
Again,
Right.
I'm not going to go and comment or assess a proposal that is hyper technical because I have no technical skill. So if I go into that technical proposal and say it has a roadmap, it has they listed their KPIs, they like, what does that tell anybody? It doesn't tell them anything other than the minimum criteria. It doesn't explain what the proposal is, how it will bring impact, why you think it's feasible. The fact that it has a roadmap and a budget doesn't make it feasible on its face. So what I think as CAs and VCAs, our role here is to engage, provide constructive feedback and criticism for voters who don't have the time to read it all and go through it, but to help them give a summary and your rationale based on your own opinion, why it's good or bad. That is the expectation. And as a person who helped write the CA scoring guide, that was our intention. It wasn't a checklist. It is a format to interact with the information that's in the proposal, not just the structure.
That's helpful, JP. And actually, to dig into that a little bit further, I'm going to open up and let's talk a little bit about item number 14, which is the reputation model document. So one of the things that's been discussed in the community is maybe having kind of a reputation system that would be kind of a minimum qualification to be a CA, and then also be part of the weighting of your reward in future rounds. So let me open up this document and make sure that, okay, does that, I don't have access to it.
Same here. So
that's difficult. So you know what?
I'm gonna look into it. I have the access, so maybe it just wasn't open up. Just give me a moment.
Okay, I'll go ahead and send a request.
Can we hear from Kyle, who hasn't spoken yet?
In a moment, yes. I'm going to get to people as we go through. Let me see if I can find that something like that in this other document. So in new ideas, hold on a second. Okay. So there's one here. So a reputation system, I'll just read it. A reputation system for CAs. If so, it shouldn't be about longevity or have you been a CA before, but about quality. What proportion of your previous reviews have been rated excellent? Maybe also include a system for voters to rate the usefulness of CA assessments too. As someone mentioned above, and a proposal's fine CA rating should be calculated by giving more weight to reviews from CAs with high reputation. And keep in mind, these are just raw ideas. This hasn't been refined yet, although, based on Dan's work, there's already work started on this effort. So with that, I will let, why don't you go ahead, and you're welcome to raise new issues, but if you want to contribute to this idea of a reputation system, that would be helpful too.
Oh yeah, no, we can start there. From a high level, I'm an entrepreneur, guys. That's what I do. I try to earn money in the ecosystem in different ways, and I've leveraged Catalyst in the past. I have active funds now, and the goal of that really is to fund entrepreneurs coming to the system so we can build and innovate. From a high level perspective, we have a whole lot of things that need to get built. If they don't get built, we're not going to win. And so, just for example, CC Vault was dependent on the serialization library that Sebastian did over at Emergo, I believe at the time, if I'm stating that correctly, but we wouldn't have the best community wallet now if those pieces weren't in place. Some of those pieces are now falling behind because that's not there, but tying it into a reputation system, the issue is no offense, guys, but we're building for a future that's very hard for a lot of people to see without understanding the technical components. So therefore, it's very difficult to assess the viability of an idea. And reputation systems should probably exist on both sides. And there's a lot of metrics. You know, the star rating review that translates to voters, it's unfair because it's inaccurate. And if you guys, you know, the voter or the proposals are public, we're putting our name out there. If you guys are going to put a star rating that affects that, you guys need to be public too. We need to take and apply analytical data every review you apply, and the best of the best need to be here serving the community. And we need to find a way to help those get better who want to stay. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. The challenge settings that I saw, and that's not everybody's fault, but what the fuck is going on, guys? Seriously, if you look at half of that shit, we're competing against Silicon Valley. And I mean, I don't want to get into everything. There's so many problems here, but I will not be using Catalyst moving forward, I don't think. I've heard it from numerous entrepreneurs that won't be doing it. Martin's not happy with it just because of the drama. That's a separate issue. There's a lot going on, guys, and it's not going right. So I don't want to say change this, change that. I need to orient myself, but things are going to change. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kyle. And one way I had a question, it's a good context with what Kyle's remarks, and I had a question for the community, and maybe we can even do this as kind of just a community poll right now. You can, let me see which reaction would be best. Oh, I don't have my reactions up right now. Let's see. Well, anyway, here's my question is, given the concerns that we've seen, I have wondered whether a sort of pre-qualification to be a CA would be appropriate. And I'm curious how many people that are doing CAs have also done proposals. You know, so what is the distribution? And my question, and the way I'm thinking about this, I've worked both in academic settings and industry settings. And in both settings, it's not typical that you would be authorized to do reviews of proposals until you've shown success at actually writing proposals. Either, you know, in an academic setting, for instance, if you're reviewing papers, typically you've had some experience authoring papers. Or if you're in industry and you're managing and you have responsibility for a budget and you're, you know, evaluating proposals for future projects, typically you've had some experience actually executing and succeeding at carrying out a project. So could we take a short poll, like it kind of, let me do it this way. If you have both done a proposal and been a CA, could you raise your hand? If you've done both of these roles, how many people have done both? That's sort of my question. So, okay, so it's not even half. If the poll is after, it's less than half. Okay, so if you could put your hands down now, that was very helpful. Now, if you've only done the CA role and you have not done a proposal, could you raise your hand? If you've only been a CA and you have not also done a proposal. Okay.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think we're looking at the wrong criteria, Kenric.
That's fair. We'll get to other criteria, Kyle. We'll get to other criteria, but I had planned to ask this question in the.
Okay, I just don't think this is a priority criterion.
Fair enough. And it's evenly distributed anyway. So the data sort of confirms what you're saying. But okay, so but maybe what I'll do is Jeremy has his hand up. So why don't you go next, Jeremy? And you can either respond to what Kyle has introduced, or you can bring up another category that we want to talk about. But I think this reputation, how we decide on reputation for CAs is an important issue. Go ahead, Jeremy.
He doesn't have a mic, apparently.
Oh, excuse me. Well, if you get that settled, you can come back. Mark, do you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. I also agree with Kyle that it shouldn't be based on whether you have done a proposal, because there's plenty of qualifications you need for being a CAE. For example, have you been involved in like some kind of project, managing facility at a company or whatever, or have you been involved in some kind of organization in an executive committee, because all those skills will help you do viable assessments. And you could also have posted a really bad proposal that didn't get successfully funded, and that wouldn't mean you're qualified as a CA. But I agree that we need some kind of CA entry test, but maybe it should rather be based on how well you know the criteria from, for example, let's say the CA guide and stuff, because I think that's a far better qualification, because a lot of the CAs obviously have never read the CA guide and have never gone to some kind of session where you're trained to become a CA.
Yeah, so that's interesting, Mark, because that would open up the idea of a kind of application process. And then you'd have to have reviewers of that, but the vCAs perhaps could be the team that review new applications to be a CA. And that might fit into this idea of part of what you have to submit is what are your areas of expertise. And there's also a proposal that's been listed where that would again cut down on that you would be randomly assigned which proposals you're going to review. But that would be also be based on kind of what your expertise is, and maybe even which challenges you feel qualified to be a reviewer for. And the purpose there would be that it's harder to game the system if you don't know in advance which proposals you're going to be responsible to review. So that's also certainly part of the process that goes through any editor or other processes. So that might be helpful as well. And again, this is another question I plan to ask the community and is the following: is obviously to be a voter, you have to be a holder of ADA. And so I'm sort of curious what people think in terms of whether CAs should have some sort of minimum stake as an ADA holder. Now, and I can see advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, if you have talented people that are qualified to do reviews, then this is a way for them to earn ADA. On the other hand, if they don't have a minimum stake, are they in a position to represent the voters in a process that has very a lot of influence on the voting? So I'll get to Oscar, Mark, and if Kyle wants to remark again, that we'll do that. But does anyone have some thoughts or comments as to whether it would be appropriate for CAs to have a minimum stake of ADA?
Just quick jumping, yes, and it should not only be a minimum stake, that this stake runs out. I mean, you review 2 things, you're out of ADA, or maybe if you're a whale, maybe you can review more things. But this also helps you focus on your reviews.
Okay, so that's interesting.
I don't know if that's the right approach, guys. It gets weird. And I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I'm a stake pool operator. So at the end of the day, I think about all this a lot. What it comes down to potentially is I would think maybe delegating some sort of stake. When you create barriers like that, we're dealing with it with smaller stake pools, and I just want to give an example. So like Quinn is a smart contract developer who came to the ecosystem and really really, didn't have a lot of ADA. He didn't come, when all the early guys came, but I swear the kid's smart. And so what we want to be able to do is leverage that type of talent from wherever it comes from and put it into being able to help us move forward, regardless of stake in the network. And the only way those people can get stake in the network is to get other people to give them stake in the network. So this idea of a reputation system, we need to incorporate feedback loops into this system, not just the people who are proposing, but the voters. The voters need to participate in the quality of the CAs as well. And the only way to do that is you guys got to come out and show your face. If you guys want to serve the mission, you got to put yourself out there. When this all comes down and it gets weird in regulation, I'm the guy that they go after, the guys running the nodes. And I'm not trying to say that or anything, as a different, but I think we can't have an integral system with integrity without having faces and names to the people influencing that system. I think it matters. And that's all.
Very good. Thank you, Kyle. I'll get to you in a moment, Oscar. So you should be able to access that reputation model document. And as you can see, there's actually quite a bit of work that's already gone into this. So I'm not going to be able to summarize all of it in this meeting. But, as ideas are developed, then the community can kind of work on them to outline them and get them more specific. And this is an example of that. And I don't know, and it looks like Dan has left, but the idea is that both the community and the IOG teams will be taking ideas like this one and trying to flesh it out into details such that it gets to the point that it could actually be implemented. So that's part of what you can contribute to in terms of making sure that the process improves. Go ahead, Oscar. What is your?
Sorry, I have to leave, Kenric. So I'm
Okay, JP. Yeah, and it's getting.
I apologize.
No problem, JP. My plan is to go for about another 15 to 20 minutes, but I understand people may have to leave, so that's fine. And I appreciate everyone's input. Go ahead, Oscar.
All right, so I'll try to keep this quick. From the last comment, yes, I would agree on staking. I mean, if you can get stake before so that you can vote or do reviews, it's wonderful. It's just a way that you have a resource that gets consumed, and it could be just virtually consumed. You just have your review ADA being consumed as you review or whatever. It's just a way to focus. Second, yes, there is the need to include new smart people, but the people that were earlier on the system were earlier because they understand more of this. I will just bring a quick example. For example, Sebastian, he had in the last one this multiverse tab rollover. I think barely any person understand why that's significant, and I didn't really understand why it's significant even until a month ago. But he is a whale and he can win that proposal. So it's also important to say, okay, old people with a lot of stake have a relevance and have a stake that large because of that. New people, new stakeholder operators should also be able to delegate, to write reviews, receive delegation to write reviews. And finally, yes, it needs to be open. Like everybody should need to sign, not only vCAs. You need the way to make this open and traceable if you're going to have a reputation. There's no anonymous reputation. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Oscar. And Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I severely disagree that CA activity should be tied to owning ADA or even cost ADA. I mean, if we're talking about a virtual budget that everyone gets assigned for every fund, that's a different thing that we definitely shouldn't tie it to ADA, because we aim to be a grassroots decentralized governance system where everyone can participate, and it would just really make it plutocratic and disenfranchise people from poorer countries like the global south, and would make it another project that is kind of neo-colonialist and that kind of gives advantages to richer people. So we definitely shouldn't do that. And also, in my opinion, we should even maybe consider not just tying voting to owning ADA, but also to something like reputation. If we have a reputation system, that this can also give you like more weight in the voting process in Catalyst, because it shouldn't only be what you financially participated to the Cardano ecosystem, but also what you participated with your work as like a CA or a vCA or a reliable proposer and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up? Thank you, Mark. That's great input, and I appreciate it. And Kyle, did you have a follow-up?
You know, I'm listening. I'm trying to orient. It gets really hairy. And all I wanted to mention is that, you know, the people who did show up early, they were told a set of rules. And you see what I'm saying? We looked at, said, okay, what do we want to do? This looks cool. Here's the game. And the game was, okay, we're going to go and earn ADA, and it's going to give us the ability to determine how the network unfolds. And, you know, there's a lot of game theory around it that's kind of working, and there's a lot of playing. But, you know, I'm not trying to say there's any contention or anything, but as we're making decisions with how voting power is used, we have to understand that there's a community that showed up for that. And that's the community that's driving and securing the network. Mm-hmm. And so we've just got to respect all constituents in that regard. I know there's a lot more people coming that have a lot lower amount of stake, but you know, we're one strong community, and we've got to bridge all those gaps with all the stakeholders. And I've got to dig in deeper to see if the Catalyst Circle Cardano representative is or if the whales are adequately being represented too. And by whale, you know, whale's different now. It's not what it was, you know, 2 years ago. And that's all. It's not applicably relevant here, but it is in the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tigani, please go ahead.
My concern is that I think if we start putting rules and regulations, that means we are really putting our values, and we are really saying that our values is a universal value. And that really concerns me a lot. Also, there should be, that's why I really am in favor of putting community around assessments and CAs and VCAs, rather than rules and the kind of, for example, that the data and what the data shows is it's important, but from Cardano's really point of view for being a global system, the more important thing, I think, is the community and the individual. And the values we think are universal may not be universal, and if we put those as a rules, if we demand others should really comply to those values, to those ideas, then we are going to really leave out a lot of people out. And I don't think that's Cardano.
Sure, we capture your idea, but I'm not sure I followed it or what the concern is. You're saying that we need to make sure that the system stays open so that it can be inclusive of people from around the globe. But at the same time, you know, part of what we're facing is that we have to improve the quality of the reviews. And in order to improve the qualities, we have to set some standards. So can you express your idea a little bit further?
Yes. I listened, for example, to you, and when you say that this is the quality, or the quality is this and this, that is, I know it's probably from your academic experience and all things that you are putting those quality standards, but those may not apply to everyone. That's what I'm concerned about. And that kind of sets a barrier for others. Really, I mean, honest people to come in, they are going to do, they can't really hold to your standards. Then they are left out.
Yeah, okay.
And also putting, here we are, for example, CAs, whether they will be paid or they're not going to pay. But the thing is, they are volunteers in the first place. Right. If they do good job, they are going to be paid. Otherwise, they are going to left out. Here we are more concerned about the VCA's work than what we are getting from the new CAs that are coming. There may be 100 bad CAs, maybe 2 wonderful CAs who don't have ADA, for example. If we are going to put ADA on that or other reputation, then we are going to lose.
The only thing I would say, Johnny, is maybe going back to the very first remark that was made, is that we made a lot of progress in growing as a community, but with that growth has become a need to kind of sharpen our skills as a community. And particularly what Kyle is saying is that, Cardano has made a lot of progress in kind of establishing itself as one of the top cryptocurrency networks. But with that also becomes challenges of maintaining that role and maintaining the excellence that got us there. So we do have to work in ways that both continue to expand the growth, continue and embrace new people coming into the community, but also as they come in, helping them to get up to speed with producing high quality work.
Yes, I do understand that, but I think I would challenge that, because the growth is, for example, in certain areas, in certain geographic areas, or in certain professions, or in certain, not everywhere. That's a kind of a lopsided. We haven't really grown to all necessary communities. We haven't brought all the necessary communities there. There are, for example, I'm not complaining. For example, let's say we have been talking about Ethiopia for a very long time. It was a kind of a flagship country for Cardano. How many people do we have from Ethiopia, for example, included in Catalyst, that actually create value to community, to Catalyst community, and to Ethiopian community? Then we see that we actually haven't achieved anything. The thing that I have seen that coming out of Ethiopia aren't really very satisfying as far as I'm concerned. They are really low quality that we need. I know there are people who can really do, but there are barriers for those people to come into this system. There are connection barriers, for example, internet barriers and knowledge and all those things. But if we are putting more barriers like the one we are proposing there, then we are leaving out those people out.
Okay.
Almost everywhere.
Thanks.
So,
yeah. And I'll go to Dwayne next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, Tommy made an interesting comment in the chat there, and I think it's very pertinent. We need to have next steps and action plan as we get near the end of this meeting, like so that we make it a productive meeting. So I think if you wrap that up, that'd be nice.
I think that's we're getting close to that. And I think the one thing I'm going to do before that is I'm going to open up item 27, which is how to become a CA in Fund 8 or future pre-CA tests, because that issue has come up a bit in the discussion. And we'll just take a quick look at that one, and then maybe we can recap. Let me just see that. Okay, so this is already a 3-page document, and you can see some of the things that people are thinking about in terms of trying to contribute to this. So, we have inputs in terms of what the CA is. We have a process for that, and then we have, what the outputs is. And I gather the idea is to kind of take a closer look at each of these parts and what can we do to kind of improve each part of this. And then I don't know, let's see what, let's see if we can go. Yeah, so to me, we'd have to look at this more carefully, but these 3 things I think are sort of very bare minimum. I'm not sure. Okay, so this was how to become this. Yeah. So bond 7 was very broad, I guess, is the point there. And then the proposal, let me see what we have here. What's the core idea is what I'm wondering. I'm not capturing the core idea. Has anyone contributed to this particular one? Is there anyone on the call that's contributed to this? It's called How to Become a CA in Fund 8 or after. All right, I'll put it aside then for now. And now maybe is a good time to kind of wrap up and talk about, what our action items are as a community. The first thing I would emphasize is that, Dan in particular is putting together this spreadsheet. So if I would recommend going through the spreadsheet, reviewing ideas that you feel strongly about and contributing to improving those ideas. And then I also think another thing is going to be to kind of rank and prioritize these as a community. What are some other action items that people want to see as we go forward? And go ahead and just interject. I won't go by hands. Just go ahead and speak up.
I was just going to ask, where did all this documentation come from? Who are the people providing the input, and how does the community even know it's here?
So the community, it's twofold. I did provide links that are in the chat box now to both of these documents, and I'll do it again in a moment. There was a Google Doc that was just generated by members of the community and passed around by the community over the last couple of weeks to kind of document what they were experiencing with the Fund 7 assessments, and then to also contribute new ideas for future processes. Dan has taken the time to work with the community to organize these in a more systematic way. And he's kind of overseeing that, as I understand that. Is that correct, Dan, in terms of the spreadsheet?
Currently, yes. And my envision would be that this would allow not to reinvent the wheel in the conversations. Very often they get resparked over and over in Telegram. So if there are like a good ideas that can be built upon and augmented into existing body of work, that they would continue there. And once the CAs are happy with the form and shape it is in, and that it's in a proper long form, that then we can, via the Catalyst Circle, perhaps as an avenue to push that for review up into the chain to the IRG that can provide comments and eventually adapt, which at the end of the, in the future would be a fully community-driven purpose. But at the point in time now, the idea is to find the priorities which can be implemented, and they're already sort of like ready-made solutions, or at least concepts in that long form that can be prioritized, because there's 23, 24 different things, but they cannot be done at the same time. We need to find what is the highest priority and what needs to get out of the gates first, and then sort of trickle it down. So finding those priorities will be key, so that there can be the resources assigned to it.
And the other thing I would emphasize is that these can become proposal ideas themselves that people can submit. And maybe even, as someone suggested earlier, a challenge focused on improving the CA process. And that's probably something that I'll discuss with the circle. The circle does some proposals that are kind of designed to be kind of across the board community issues. And this might be one of those that the circle supports as a new proposal or as a new challenge.
Yeah, I think what we could add as action items is maybe what Tigenia said, that we need to go for a better localization of Catalyst. For example, like how can we make the idea scale process more available to people that don't speak English, like local translations and stuff like that. And maybe another action item we could add was the discussion we had earlier about how CAs become vCAs, because I don't see that in this list here.
Right. Well, your last question there, just to state it, right now, the process of becoming a vCA is to be successful as a CA. If you get an award as a CA, then you're qualified to be a vCA.
Yes, I know, but I mean, we already had the discussion about that it doesn't make sense because basically everyone that posts a manifold of assessments, even if they are crappy, has a fair chance to at least get one of them awarded goods and become a vCA.
Yes, indeed. And on that, I can even jump to it because someone posted this on Telegram and I added it. So if you kind of just have a very rough idea, you can add it to this Word document.
Okay, but
and it's in here. It's so
okay.
in light of the problems discovered, can't IOG or the community make a filter less than 30% filtered out as a criteria for vCA status in Fund 8? Catalyst is still an experiment headed by IOG, and it's not like they've announced what criteria was going to be used for vCA determination in Fund 8. So the point here is some ideas are simple enough that there may be time this month to get that into the planning for the criteria for Fund 8. Other ideas involve some technical innovation. There's ideas around digital identities, that would allow you to maintain a reputation over time. That involves some technical innovation that will take further development. Yep.
Okay, so this one is just a list for quick action items, and okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't there, but I thought only the thing from the other list is acted on. Okay, thanks.
Right. Okay, very good. You can use are there any, there's no restrictions, Dan, in terms of someone adding something to the spreadsheet, right? This is open to the community, correct?
Yeah, if you comment on it, on each of those fields, I can transcribe them. Again, I would prefer this specific document to be more already like a thought through with some sort of like backup long form doc, or at least like a problem sensing link to the idea scale or something like that, so that we don't overwhelm with like just random ideas, which are great, just so that we can keep it focused, because my goal is to be able to drive this at least internally. And if we present too much, I know that there will cause paralysis, like where to focus on it. So I just want to make sure that like this one is like the one that we'll be able to present to the team internally, whether research or whatnot, that once we're happy with a certain level of detail in any of these, they can be taken up in review and then eventually adopted as well. So I think there's like different levels, but the goal here is at least to have some formal structure now that the IOG can be looking in. And then perhaps this can transform into something else. For now, it's a simple spreadsheet. Later down the road, we can turn that into something else. And I did it over past couple of days because I was getting a little lost in that iterative Dropbox. It was getting lengthy and whatnot. So this is my attempt to compact and push back. So it's easier to have like a bird's eye view of like what the conversations actually are and where they're at.
Yeah, and I agree. You don't want to overwhelm this part of it. And so also, I didn't bring it up today, but I will, after the meeting, review input on the problem sensing part of idea scale that relate to the CA and vCA process, because that's the formal way to introduce a new idea. And that makes sense too. Yep. Other thoughts in terms of the action items going forward?
Well, I think we need to be very clear on the fact that we have an issue that needs to be solved, which is this CA vCA quality for next fund. And that's a fire that needs to be extinguished so that we can have the next fund. Apart from that, we have a lot of things on the list, and we need to sit down and like figure out how to make it a community-led process, because now it sounds like, I don't know what were the words that Danny used, but it sounded like we need to convince someone up there that things should be done, and I'm not sure if that's the right process.
Yeah, very good. I'm gonna, yeah, and I think that's a good way to close, because I agree with you, Tommy. There is a real critical need that we have to be focused on as a community and solve for the next round. I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and that's principally for Nadia, who was taking notes, and JP, who's left, but I'll try to get in touch with JP, or maybe he'll reach out to me. So let me, and I actually do, I'm going to put my own personal email here right now, because that's the one I remember, but I do have an email as part of the circle also. It's not in my head, so I can't type it out right now, but there is a, each of us on the circle has a community email as well. So Nadia, if you could send the notes that you took to me, I'll work on getting them published as part of the recording. Thanks. Great. All right. Any other closing thoughts? This is a great discussion. It not, you know, one of the things I sense is like, it's great input. It's great to have the discussion, and it's a baby step towards actually accomplishing some of what needs to be done. But, you know, we'll all be working together over the coming months to keep driving the process towards higher quality and being able to provide these opportunities for a broader community across the globe. So appreciate all your input. Thank you. Any other closing remarks? Go ahead, Oscar.
I will have a closing on the CA work on review, but also engagement with the proposer. In my case, as a proposer, I get about 17 to 20 reviews for my proposals, but on the comments on idea scale, I get 2 or 3 comments like, this looks good. And there is indeed no incentive for the community advisor to actually accompany the proposer to say, well, maybe you are missing this, or try this, or maybe shift to a different challenge where you would be more pertinent. And I would say most of that is because the incentive is only for being a reviewer, not being engaged with the proposer. And
it's a
that way
question, because I'm thinking, right, my first thought is, yeah, maybe if there was an incentive to comment on idea scale, that would encourage more comments. And then, as we've already seen, that would be gained right away too, and we'd get flooded with comments that maybe aren't contributing value. So, but let's get it in there as an idea, you know, and let's flesh that out as to whether there'd be a way to do that. And yeah,
it will be definitely helpful, because the person that is going to review will say you don't have KPIs, should also comment that before. I mean,
yeah, right. Yeah. All right, everyone, I really appreciate you joining us today. It was a great discussion, and I appreciate all the different input from a variety of different people. And you know, have a wonderful day, and we'll be putting the video and notes out shortly.
Thanks. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.